The Arbinger Institute is a coaching and training company with over 40 years of experience. We help organizations and leaders transform their cultures by enabling the shift in mindset that leads to exceptional results. Learn more at www.arbinger.com. That's www.arbinger.com. Welcome to ATD's Talent Development Leader podcast, featuring monthly conversations with the greatest influencers in the talent development field. We cover the latest trends, hot topics, and future-focused ideas that current and aspiring TD leaders need to know. Learn more by visiting www.td.org and searching for Talent Development Leader podcast. Michele Molitor is a force for positive change in today's challenging mental health landscape. She is a master coach, hypnotherapist, speaker, and co-author of the new international best-selling book, I Am Perfectly Flawsome: How Embracing Imperfection Makes Us Better. She has dedicated her career to helping others activate positive change in their lives, both personally and professionally. As CEO of Nectar Consulting, Inc., Michele's expertise focuses on empowering professionals to overcome anxiety, self-doubt, and the stress that often saturates modern work environments. Clients affectionately dubbed her the Mind Detective, not just for her intuitive insights, but for her unique rapid rewiring approach that effectively combines the science of positive psychology and neuroscience with the healing powers of somatic and mindfulness practices. The results? Tangible improvements that make a real lasting difference in people's lives. Hi, Michele. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Anne. I'm so delighted to be here with you. Thanks.
As I mentioned in the introduction, you are co-author of the book, I Am Perfectly Flawsome: How Embracing Imperfection Makes Us Better. This book wrestles with the tension between futile perfectionism and settling for mediocrity or worse. You examine how to leverage this struggle to guide readers toward a mindset that finds joy in their flawed selves and imperfect works, as well as those of other people in the world we live in, without giving up on working to improve them all. In your book, you examine the distinction between striving for perfectionism and striving for excellence. Can you explain what you believe to be the difference between the two?
Yes, absolutely. So striving for perfectionism, or toxic perfectionism, as we refer to it, is that need to always have things just so. It has to be just right before I can hand it over, before I can send it to the next level, or declare it complete. And that toxic level of perfectionism gets you caught spinning down in the weeds of making just those tweaks and adjustments that you can do forever and ever, because as we found and as we talk about in the book extensively, nothing is perfect. Perfection is an ideal that we strive towards, but it's something that is always out of reach. And so striving for excellence, on the other hand, is always about doing your best, bringing your best, and then letting it go. Like, okay, I've done my best for today, and I poured my all into it, but not getting hung up on the minutia. In my former career as a graphic designer and creative director, I could tell just by looking at something, that's 2 pixels off. You need to move it over. Now, I'm the only one who's going to notice that, but I'm like, right. And so it was really easy to get caught in the weeds of, right, before letting something go to wherever it needed to be. So that's why we love the term flossom. Because as the supermodel Tyra Banks once said, it's perfectly possible for flaws and awesomeness to coexist. So we confer, my colleague Tom Collins, my co-author, and I, that everything is flawed in some unique way. That's what makes each and every one of us perfectly imperfect and unique. It's what makes us flossom. And that includes every flower, every tree, every single one of us. And when we can keep that in mind, it makes life so much easier and less stressful because you're not spinning around trying to get that last thing just right.
And I would say flaws are interesting, right? Flaws make us interesting. Perfection, which seems unattainable, right? What is that? Some might say is boring, right? Or is not as not as flavorful, not as unique and dynamic as the flaws. So I really appreciate that perspective. I like the conversation in your book too around, you talked about toxic perfectionism, but really the point of view that really any kind of perfectionism is toxic, right? Or not healthy or not good. Could you talk
Unhealthy.
a little bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In our world today, social media has created a hyper comparison culture. You can go through the pages of any social media feed, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and all you see are these perfectly curated lives and everything is just right. And it's become insidious, I would say. And the way social media platforms and our smartphones are designed is to keep you on them. So it becomes a dopamine hit in your brain every time you see something. You're like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And so for our youth in particular, it's highly toxic. We talk about the numbers in our book about the levels of perfectionism seen in kids as young as 10 and what that does to their mental health and well-being. We're in a mental health crisis in our country, and so many more kids are getting addicted to things or, anxious, depressed, or even suicidal because of it. And so learning how to accept our imperfections, our flawsomeness, is just a healthier way of being.
And the cost of the pursuit of perfection, right? You talked about, knowing something's 2 pixels off, right? And striving to get it to a more ideal state. And maybe the lack of time or all the time that's spent in doing so, or the resources, right? And could you talk a little bit about what it means to embrace being flawsome for folks who are leaders in workplaces, right? Who are leading teams of people, or even for individuals as employees, and what that might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we think being flawsome is really about embracing both the perfect or the imperfect, the different nuances that each person in an organization brings to a project, a perspective that enhances the creativity of a team, of a project, of a particular thing that's being built or created. So taking it to a leadership perspective, it's all about really allowing people to bring their full selves to work. It's easy to get caught in myopic views of someone. Well, John, his role is X and Mary's role is Y, and that's all they're here to do. No, they each bring their own unique life experiences to the table that lend to the color of a tapestry that is woven together by team dynamics. That's what makes it so much more exciting and meaningful when we do have the opportunity to work with other people.
I'd like to continue to focus these ideas. There's so much richness here in this conversation around perfectionism and being flawsome, but to continue to focus on applications for our listeners in the context of the workplace, knowing that obviously these are TD leaders, leading people in their orgs, leading learning in their orgs. I like your discussion around imposter syndrome in the book, and I think this has been a big topic for the workplace in recent years, for the talent development field in recent years. And you make a connection between it and perfectionism, saying imposter syndrome is often the result of toxic workplace relationships or cultures that foster a lack of dignity and respect, which can quickly diminish a person's belief in themselves, their value, and their worth, creating a need to be perfect at all costs. Can you talk more about this and how it plays out for many people in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned in my former career, I was a creative director, and in looking back, I could see how much I was suffering from imposter syndrome. I grew up in the South, and there's a good old boys network that is still large and in charge. And so I was constantly trying to prove myself to maintain my seat at the table. And so my imposter syndrome was on full tilt. And the perfectionism, I would say, is part of that. It's a symptom of, or a branch of imposter syndrome, because getting it right was my way of making sure that people saw the value that I brought and the talent that I brought, and that I was capable and I was worthy of being in the position that I was in. Other people from the outside in would say, well, of course you're worthy of that position. They wouldn't have given it to you otherwise. But it's that internal head game that we play with ourselves because of the little bits of negative feedback that we get that have us then start second guessing ourselves and self-doubting ourselves, which can very quickly spin out and take you down the rabbit hole, only amplifying the perfectionism, amplifying the imposter syndrome, which then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's like, which came first, the bullying or the imposter syndrome? I got bullied essentially out of my position by two folks that I hired. And it took my imposter syndrome to a whole new level. Well, what if I don't know what I'm doing? Oh my gosh, right? And ultimately I got laid off. And the gift of it was that I found my true calling and purpose as a coach and a hypnotherapist. But in the moment, it was so painful to be inside of that toxic environment and like constantly spinning and working harder and harder and harder. I was working 80-hour weeks, just trying to get it right to prove myself. And living in that way for extended periods of times is really detrimental to your health and well-being, not only your mental health, but your physical health. As we get caught in that dis-ease of ourselves and our mental state, it very quickly can manifest as disease in the body, causing all sorts of things from, chronic headaches, migraines, inflammatory bowel syndrome, and a whole host of other things. So it's fascinating to notice that. And on our research, we found that imposter syndrome affects 79% of adults. That's a lot. That's a high number. Now, it doesn't mean it's for ongoing periods of time, not necessarily, but as leaders, it's important to step back and look at what's the water we're swimming in, what's the culture we're creating through our own leadership, and how is that supporting or disempowering our team members.
Thank you for sharing that story, Michele. And I imagine it resonates with many listeners today. And I found it fascinating thinking about the roots of all of this, and how deeply rooted toxic perfectionism is within management philosophy and culture in organizations. And you kind of peel back the layers. Again, one of the chapters in your book goes into this. Even the seemingly harmless notion of continuous improvement, right? That's thrown out there. Oh, it's a positive thing. Like we're always, getting better at getting better. But that can be, again, at the kind of forefront of this and the root of such toxic workplace culture. I love the interplay throughout the book of several Japanese concepts in your research and in how you kind of unpack these concepts, such as Kaizen and wabi-sabi. Can you explain for listeners some of the concepts here around, management philosophies that have been at the root of some of this, and then how your co-author and you have discussed Kaizen and Wabi Sabi as kind of the antidote, or the way that you approach the striving for excellence and kind of the duality here?
My co-author, Tom Collins, he originally started on this path to writing this book when he, partially because he discovered the Japanese art called kintsugi. It is the art and the philosophy of called golden repair, where you take a piece of broken pottery and you put it back together, sealing the cracks with lacquer and then dusting them with gold powder, thus making the broken item more beautiful and valuable than the original. And so as he was unpacking kintsugi, he came across these other terms. Kaizen means to continuously improve. So in management structures, you often hear the goal of 0 defects, which just perpetuates the idea of a need for perfectionism, and that continuous improvement, while continuous improvement is a healthy thing, the 0 defects when it comes to humans, it's just not possible, right? We are all have our broken pieces that have been mended back together. And so as we strive for continuous improvement to continuously reach our full potential, we will never reach perfection because it's always out of reach. Now, Wabi Sabi is the celebration of the imperfections in everything. And it reminds us that life's tough stretches and dark patches enable us to learn and grow and become stronger as we move forward, learning how to appreciate the beauty and simplicity in things. One of the favorite things that we learned as we were looking at these terms was there are cultures around the world that implicitly put flaws into the things that they make just to make it unique. Like Navajo Indian rugs, they put flaws into them because they want it to be unique in each of its forms. And that's just one example. There's a lot of different cultures that do this. So as we can embrace the art of continuous improvement and celebrating imperfections and our team members and the projects that we do and the products that we're creating, it gives us more room for breathing. It helps lower stress levels. Not to say that we want to produce mediocrity. We're not saying that at all. It's about bringing our best and doing our best each and every day.
And that looks different each and every day too, right? The best version of ourselves shows up a little different every day, and being okay with that and embracing that. Yeah.
Right. Because you never know what has happened that morning to someone. They might look fine on the outside, but maybe they bashed their toe into the bed and they're walking around limping. Or they got really bad news or really exciting news first thing that morning that completely shifted their perspective and the trajectory of their day. And yet they still have to show up inside of this myopic perspective of this is what I need to do today to complete my work. And we think, this always amuses me, we think we can separate our work self from our personal self. But I hate to tell you, friends, you just can't do that, right? Because everything influences each other. Yeah. And so learning to embrace all of that will make your life a little easier, I think.
And I think that's one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, Michele, on this podcast, because I think that's the opportunity for our listeners, for folks in talent development profession. And you talked earlier about the opportunity to empower your people. And so how do you do that? And I think there has traditionally been this focus in talent development on performance improvement. So uncovering skills gaps in individuals and performance needs in organizations. and determining the best solutions or interventions, such as training and coaching, to close those gaps and to increase performance so an organization or an org can achieve its business goals. And this is all very focused on outcomes, performance, productivity, right? Which I'd argue are traits of perfectionism and a more fixed mindset. However, within recent years, I've been encouraged with the shift around understanding the more crucial role talent development plays in creating meaning and purpose and empowering their people at work. And I think this includes conversations around psychological safety, belonging, inclusivity. This is really important work. So what if our primary goal as TD leaders was to improve the lives of people in our organizations? What might that look like?
I love this question, Anne. I know from my 23 plus years of being a coach and a hypnotherapist, we all need to have meaningful work. And that can be in big ways and little ways. It is a part of our raison d'etre of why do I get out of bed each morning? What am I here to be of contribution? How can I be of contribution in a meaningful way that fills my cup, that lights me up in a good way? And I would argue without that, people very quickly and easily fall into depression, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, and can even become suicidal because they haven't been able to tap into that thing that brings them meaning. In the book, we talk about, here's our list of what we think helps create meaningful work that brings purpose to one's work. So, number 1, autonomy to make choices. Number 2, wielding some sense of control over our journey. Number 3, intellectually stimulating, inspiring, and engaging work. Number 4, creativity and opportunities for expanded imagination. Number 5, connection between the effort and the reward. Number 6, having trust and collaboration. Number 7, having a sense of value and worth for our contributions, being recognized for it. Number 8, care and concern from and for our colleagues and clients. Number 9, meaningful discussions and feedback loops. And number 10, contributing to something bigger than ourselves. Each one of these are ways that we found help us make meaning out of the madness that could be our day-to-day lives with all the things that are going on in the world. And in addition to that, one of the things I found to take this even to the next level is really understanding each person's dignity traits. When you can unlock the dignity of someone in their work, i.e., what are their motivational drivers? What is it that gets them out of bed every day? And you can see that and reflect on that and understand it, not through the lens of this is what Anne's job is, or this is what Tom's job is, but this is what brings Anne to life. Then you can support that in the people on your team, encouraging them in a more meaningful way that then ties into that top 10 list. And so I stumbled my way into a really powerful tool called Dignify. And for all your listeners, if this is something they'd like to check out, it's all about how do we bring that meaning to our work. You can go to dignify.com and there's a try Dignify button in the upper right-hand corner. And if you want to take it, you can use the code FLAWSOME, FLAWSOME, to take it. And you'll get a magical discount to take it. It'll cost you like $9 or something, $10. But it's a powerful tool that I use both with individuals and with teams to help them see each other from a more human perspective, to understand what those motivators are so that they can each bring their unique perfectly imperfect flaws to their work every day.
That is excellent, Michele. I I think this is the good work, right? This is the hard work sometimes. I mean, to become this intentional with your people and see everyone as a whole unique person, right? And all of the traits that they bring, the flossomeness that they bring to the table. It certainly is good and hard work. And I think it's so worth it. And I encourage our listeners to check out that is it an assessment, Michele? Dignified?
It's actually a survey. It's a patented survey. It'd take you about 10, 15 minutes, and you just want to answer it with your gut reactions, right? Because it's based on your emotional motivators, not your logical ones. So you really want to answer from your gut, from your heart. And with it, I'm happy to do a debrief session with anyone who takes it, complimentary, and learn how to bring your top 5 dignity traits into your work more and more each day. It's really beautiful.
Well, as we wrap up today, Michele, can you please share for listeners, and I'm sure for many folks, as I did, learning about your work and your research and the ideas in I Am Perfectly Flossom, it resonated with me on a personal level, right? And as you said, personal and professional blend together. There's no distinction here. So also on a professional level, how I might apply these in my work. Can you share some practical tips for how folks might get started letting go of perfectionism in their lives and work, and encouraging others on their teams and in their organizations to do the same?
Sure. So I go into more detail in these in the book. These points, I think, will give you something to think about and give everyone some places to start. So first and foremost, remember you are enough. You are enough, you do enough, and as you love yourself just as you are and just as you aren't, you'll find more freedom in that place. Practice the 80-20 rule. Ask yourself, which 20% of what you do gets you 80% of what you want? This is a way to start retraining your brain that the ideal of 100% is really not required. And will help start to calm your mind and body. Learn to delegate. If you're caught into thinking of, and I'm guilty of this more often than I should admit, no one else can do it as well as I can do. Move that 2 pixels to the left, right? But consider all the time and effort you regain when you're able to hand that off to someone who has more skills or a different perspective on something, so you can spend more time doing other things that are meaningful to you. Get out of the weeds, right? Learn to take breaks and step back so you can see the bigger picture of what you're doing based on your why. Why am I doing this? For the sake of what? Always practice self-compassion, right? Treat yourself with kindness and understanding, especially in those moments where you do fall down, because we all do. Stop minimizing yourself. Women in particular do this, but men do it as well, as we push aside compliments. Oh, whatever. No, receive those compliments and allow yourself to bask in that moment of recognition. This is a really important one. Limit your social media. Reduce the exposure to the social media platforms that promote constant comparison, because it's unhealthy. Full stop. Celebrate yourself and your progress. Shift your focus from achieving the perfect end results to the progress that you make along the way. Hashtag practice makes progress. Embrace your mistakes, right? Because each one is a learning opportunity. You learn what you need to learn from that mistake, and then you keep moving forward. This is also really important. Redefine your success. Reevaluate what your definition of success is. Is it based on this constant seeking external validation or comparison to others, other people's standards? Or can you allow yourself to step more into a place of striving for excellence instead? Last but not least, remember that you are not alone. Reach out to a friend, a coach, a counselor, or your favorite hypnotherapist who can provide you the emotional support and guidance that you need to move past those fear blinders that have you caught in that perfectionistic attitude. So when you remember that perfection is an unattainable illusion, but self-acceptance and personal growth are achievable goals, this will lead to a much more satisfying, fulfilling, and flawsome life.
Thank you so much, Michele, for spending time with us today. Please tell listeners how they might connect with you to ask any of their own questions or to continue the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always visit my website, michelemolitor.com. And if you want to check out the book, you can go to IamPerfectlyFlawsome.com. And you'll find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, I'm Rapid Rewire. Otherwise, you'll find me at Michele Molitor. And I think, Anne, you'll have in the show notes, I have a free gift for everyone as well. My ebook called What's Causing Your Imposter Syndrome? 6 Triggers Crushing Your Confidence.
Thank you so much, Michele. Enjoyed our conversation today. I appreciate your time with us.
Oh, thank you. It's been a delight to be here with you, Anne. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast by the Association for Talent Development. If you found this show insightful or useful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague.